Now you know what self is and how important this particular keyword is. Self contains the location in memory where the variable or the objects has been stored, and that location is passed to the methods or the functions that we define inside of the class. And not only that, we can have variables without self also inside of a class. And the LGB rule will be applied to the variables which are defined and do not use self. And they has to be defined in the class, not inside of a method. So when you define such variable that does not have any relationship with self, those are called class variables, and LGB rule, which is local, global and built-in, would be applied to those variables. The variables that are used with self are the variables that belong to a particular instance of the class, and the LGB rule does not apply to those variables. Now these variables without self are called class variables, and we access them using the class name dot the variable name. So there should not be any self here. And the variables with self are called instance variables or object variables, and they are accessed using self dot variable name. Now let me show you the practical usage using some hands-on. So again, I will define a class, and the name of the class is customers, and let's say I define organization as BLR and location as India. So these are the two variables that I have defined inside the class. Now these are not inside of any method. And now let me go ahead and define a method. Get customer details, and here self would come automatically, and I'll pass the customer ID. Now let me pass it as of now. I'll come back to this later on. Now I'll define a customer, cust1, which would be a object or an instance of customers class. And here what will I do? I will call the method get customer details, and I'll pass the ID maybe 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, so now coming back to the method, here what is happening? The self, you know already what self contains. Self contains the address of cust1. So cust1 is pointing to a memory location. That memory location would be passed to self because we need to operate on the object that is created by cust1. And 1 2 3 would be accepted in the ID variable. Now what I have to do is that as I have to work on the cust1 object, I have to make sure that whatever happens here inside of it, inside of this method or the function, all those things happen on a particular object only. So in that case, what I'll use self.id equal to ID. Now what is happening here? Even though I have ID, what is this self.id? You know that it contains the address or pointer to the memory location where cust1 is, because I've called it for cust1. So 1 2 3 4 5 would be passed to cust1's memory address, and there I'm storing another variable named ID, right? So that's what it is doing. Similarly, I can do the same for another customer, cust2, and I will pass 102208. Now what would happen when it calls 102208 would be passed to ID, and ID would be assigned to self.id. This is a variable that I'm defining inside of the method or inside of the function. So this self.id is local to this function. It is not global, or it is creating an ID variable for each of these instances. For the first instance, the ID variable would be self.id would have the value 12345. For the second time, the self.id would have value 102208. I could have used cust_id also. So now whatever operation I do, it has to be self.cust_id. All right. Now what about these variables? Now these variables are actually outside of the method. So these are called class variables, and these are, or basically this one is called an instance variable. So now what would happen if I execute this particular program? First it will print 12345, then it will print 102208. So let's try that out. And it is printing 12345 for then 102208 for two different functions. Now let's do one thing. I'll also print the class variable. So now if I use org, now it will give me error because it says that it will give error saying that org is not defined. Did you mean self.org? So why it is not defined? Because this is inside of the function. I have not defined any org variable. And what would happen is, because I am passing self, there won't be any LGB rule applied to this. So it will not go to the upper level to try to find out the org value. So here, if I want to use the class variable, I'll have to type the class name followed by the variable name. So in this case, it is printing customers.org and maybe the location separated by spaces and customers dot location. Now these are the class variables, right? So now if I execute this, what would happen for both the instances? The value of customers.org and customers.location would remain the same, as you can see, because these are variables without self. It does not pass the address of the instance cust1 and cust2. So these are class variables org blr and org india. Now can I change it inside of the method? So let's do that. Now let's say org is railways, and now I'll print the org and location again, and I'll change the location also. So customers dot location may be NFR. And now if I execute this, as you can see that first time it is printing the BLR India because that's what it was. Then I set it up as Railways NFR. And what happened was that next time for the second customer, it has printed Railways NFR only in both the cases because it got changed. Now let's I define org here, and I mention org as PVT, and let me print org. And here I will again, what will I do is I will set org here to program, and I'll print org 2 times, and let me comment out the second instance and execute this particular function. Now execute this particular code. So let's go the output one by one. So first we have org equal to program, and I'm printing org, so it should print program, which is the case. Then I'm instantiating the object or initializing the object. So I'm creating a variable or an object of customers class. Then I'm using the method of the customers class, and here I'm printing org equal to method. So now what is happening, if I print org here, and then I'm printing the customer ID, which is 1 2 3 4 5, and I'm printing org again, and this time it is method. And then we have Bangalore India, BLR India, and then Railways NFR, which is fine. And outside it is printing org only. So now LGB rule has been applied. Okay, so now what would happen? Let me execute this again. Let me remove the print of customer ID and customer's location, and again I'll just comment this out and execute this. So it is program method program because I'm executing it in the program, then I'm calling the method, it is going inside of the method, printing the org method, and then again printing program. So now if I comment this, then LGB rule would be applied. Now if I print, it will be program in all the cases because this is a variable without self. So it would go ahead and apply the LGB rule. So it is not there in local. It will go to the global and it will see, okay, org is there. Let me print the value of org here. So that's why it is printing program again. So this is a variable without self, and LGB rule is getting applied here. But we cannot do the same with variable that is part of an instance or that has self with it. We cannot do that. Now I can use the variable that is defined at class level. The LGB rule is also getting applied here because the org or customers.org is not inside of the function. It is in the customer. So that's why it has not found customer.org here. So it went outside and then it found the org variable in the class. So I'm using the class variable here. As I'm using the class variable here, so that's why it is printing BLR. So LGB rule is getting applied to this variable also, kind of, but definitely we cannot apply LGB rule for variables with self, because these pertain to a particular instance only. A few slides back I talked about this init method or init function. So why it is used for? So this is a built-in function, and if we use it, what would happen? It would work as a constructor. So what is a constructor? It is called automatically when an object is created from a class, and as it is called automatically, we can use it to initialize an object with certain values. So this is how we define def underscore underscore init, then underscore underscore. Obviously we'll have to pass self, and then we maybe define the or initialize the object with the id value and price value. So let me show you this. So I'm using the same customer, and the init method should be defined as underscore underscore followed by init, open bracket and close bracket, self would come automatically, and let's say I provide the customer first name and last name and maybe location. So what am I going to do here is that I'll initialize it. So self dot first name equal to fn, and self dot last name will be equal to ln, and self dot location would be equal to loc. Okay, so this is what it is doing. It is initializing it. Now let me define a customer object. Now because I have an initialize function with underscore underscore in it, I'll have to pass certain value when I create the object. But so if I don't pass any value, and let me execute this, so it is giving error, missing 3 required positional parameters, arguments fn, ln and location. Why? Because I have not passed those values, and the moment I initialize or create an object or create a variable of class customers, by default this will be executed. So you'll have to make sure that we pass some value. And what will I do? First name maybe Netaji, and maybe second name is Bose, and location is India. So now what would happen? If I execute this, this has been initialized. Of course, we are not doing anything with the initialized values, but we can do if we want. And I'll do a very simple thing. I'll just print. Now what will I do? Cust1. Now if I type cust1 dot, I can see the location, first name and last name. So I'll print the first name. Then I will print the last name, and then I will print the location. And here I'll mention name, customer first name followed by space. All right. So now if I execute this, I'll see name is Netaji Bose and location is India. Let me create one more customer, and the name of the customer is customer 2, and I'm passing first name as Nelson and last name as Mandela, and location is South Africa, right? And if I print this, next time I'll see it should be cust2 rather. Now if I execute this, I should see first for the first customer, name is Netaji Bose, location India. The second one is Nelson Mandela, location South Africa. So I can use these variables here also, because these are all related to or initialized for individual instances. How do I know that it has been initialized for individual instances? Because we are passing self. And if needed, let's say I mention org and freedom fighter or freedom fighters, and now if I print org, what would happen? So if I execute, it is saying org is not defined. Why? Because I am not printing here, I am printing outside. So that's why org is giving error here. But if I print org here, it would not give me any error. So it has printed location freedom, org freedom fighters, and it has given error for the last one. I can comment this one, and if I want, I can remove this one from here and define the org here, and now it would be fine. Again, LGB rule is coming along with the objects. So you can see the org freedom fighters have been printed in both the cases, right? So this is what init method does. It basically initializes a particular object or variable. So now whenever we create this object cust1, I know that it would be initialized with first name Netaji, last name Bose, and location India. Cust2 would be initialized with first name Nilsson, last name Mandela, location South Africa. So this is what the init method does. Why it was initialized? Because we passed these two variables, or these two values rather, and the init function was automatically executed. And we have also seen that if you do not pass any value, let's say customers, and I do not pass any value, it would give me error because customers.init missing 3 required parameters, and this is happening for cust. Wow, how do I know that? Let's print self and execute. Now the problem is because of customers, so it is expecting 3 arguments, 4 arguments. So the first argument is already there, so self is basically the pointer where cust is stored, and then it is also expecting first name, last name, and location. How do I know that it is for cust? So let me do that. Let me show you. Let's pass cust, and cust, and here I'll print self also. Okay, org is not there. So let me print self, and I'll print cust also, and I'll remove all the other ones. So if you see, the address is same, right? So that's why I know that the error was for customers, for the cust object. So this is how we can use the underscore init followed by underscore to initialize a particular object. Now this is called double underscore or dunder, and so it is spelled as dunder, then init, and then dunder. So that's how it is spelled as dunder init dunder. It's not double underscore or underscore.